Sarah, is my, Len here, Sarah, is my video up?
No, Len, your video's not up.
I don't understand why.
And I don't know why the video conferencing one isn't up either.
Does it show him his video on there?
I can see the boardroom, Sarah.
Yeah. Oh, you can?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Can you see?
Well, now I see Jesse, but
Like the boardroom's just one of the grids you guys see. You can see each other and the boardroom.
yeah,
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could see Colin and Keith and Sarah.
Okay.
You have a hard copy?
You can see Billy.
John's head.
You got your wand open, wishing happy birthdays with inside looking in the wall.
Hey, Len, can you turn on your video?
Somebody
It
mine
doesn't
comes
have
on
an
when you
option,
speak into this or not?
it's not highlighted. When I go to click that video, it just, we cannot detect a webcam. So maybe I'm gonna see if it's disconnected or something. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Well, you have one. It's an iMac, right? It says iMac Charles. So you must have one built right in. It probably asks you to say
No.
allow somewhere.
No, this is a Surface I'm using.
Oh. Oh, Len that. All right. Fine.
It's super windy here.
Uh-oh.
A bit breezy here at the hospital. As I look out the window at the few remaining tall trees we have.
We've had a lot of wind gusts this year.
Close the door, Brittany.
The door's closed.
So is everybody ready for liftoff or not? Oh, we're getting Kevin here. Yeah, I think he's downstairs. No, he's right there. He's right there. I thought he was behind me, coming in. Just check
Wind the
that.
clock for Jesse.
How did Brittany move down there? This is like watching the Brady Bunch.
I know. Up and on.
It's totally.
I wish it was
Based
the
on the
Brady.
That's
notes,
really
the last person who talked, they move around.
Just what our
Frickin'
powers.
get more like Gilligan's Island.
Like,
It's a
yep.
Brady Bunch for some sound.
Okay, wow. We have it. Streaming.
Way to go, Sarah.
Yay.
Yay.
The only one missing there is me. How did that happen?
You're there.
We see you, John.
Keith?
So Len, are we waiting on him or?
He is there.
His video.
If you guys.
Yeah, we should have had IT assisting us all from the first go here.
Well, it's our first real kick at this cat, so I think we'll be okay. Is everybody ready to go?
Paul's here as well.
Okay.
Oh, good, thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Witness protection program.
Yeah, I know. It's like two.
Everybody has the same initials.
Yeah. Yeah, it's okay, we're ready to go. Thanks, everybody, for making the effort to get online today. And Sarah, thanks a lot for juggling this whole thing together. And Keith sort of helped a little bit here at the tail end to get us through the finer details of getting this up and running.
I think Sarah did all the work.
I think she did the
Pushed a
bulk.
lot of buttons.
She sure as hell did. Heck
Eventually
did,
those
yeah.
buttons don't get someone good.
And so we're here today to deal with the Council Procedures Bylaw. And I'd like to start off by saying I'd like to acknowledge the land to which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Tanaha, Silix and Sinix peoples, and is home to the Métis and many diverse Aboriginal persons. We honour the connection to the land, rivers, and respect the importance of the environment to our strength as a community. And with that, I'd like a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Councillor Page, we need a seconder.
Second, Jesse.
Second by Jesse. Good idea to shout out your name. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Page. All right, so in front of us we have a resolution to require waiving the notice of special regular council meetings, and staff is proposing an amendment to the council procedure bylaw for two reasons. One, to allow,
Read this first.
Yeah, sorry, Mayor Dooley, we need to.
all in
just-
favor, right? of the agenda. Sorry, beg your pardon.
No, sorry, we need to just get council to waive the
Notice.
notice for the special meeting.
All right, sorry, I beg your pardon. So the first one is to waive the notice for the special meeting.
Cal?
Janice?
And Janice, yeah, okay. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so now we move on to the bylaw, right?
Yep.
So staff is proposing an amendment to the council procedure bylaw.
Adopt agenda? Did we adopt the agenda?
Did we do the agenda?
I think so. We had mover and a seconder.
There was a mover and a seconder.
Yeah, we've done the
Okay.
agenda.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start again. Staff is proposing amendment to the council procedure bylaw for two reasons. One, to allow the presiding member of a meeting to participate electronically if needed. And two, to allow as many members of council to attend a regular and a committee of the whole meeting electronically as the situation may require. Council is now requested to provide the first of three readings to the council procedure amendment bylaw number 3491/2020. And this is not a free lunch to not show up at City Hall. We have an obligation to do that, so it's really important to council keep this in mind, that it's about getting, if we're in situations such as we are today, or at this particular time, we have the liberty to make a choice to use this type of meeting. But we want to be careful that we don't allow this to be something that we would use outside of those parameters if possible. Anyway, there are two recommendations in front of us, and I'd like somebody to move them to get them on the, one of them, number one, to get them on the floor.
I'll move number
Well-
one.
Councillor Page, second by Councillor Renwick. Any questions or comments by the mover or the seconder? Start. You okay?
For the first and three readings, yeah, I'm fine.
Clear mud? Okay. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Janice, Brittany?
Yeah.
Thank you. You can put your hand up too, just as well, so. Oh, okay, passed. And the next one is the council procedure bylaw number 3491/2020 be read a third time by title only.
Okay, hold on. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, we lost your
Get a
video.
motion and then we'll, and a second, and then we'll question it, yeah. Do you want
Okay.
to, mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move it. Rick.
Moved by Cal and second by Rick, thank you. Go ahead, Jesse.
Okay, my question is, in the bylaw, under 2.25, it says, no more than two members of council at any time may participate electronically at council meeting or committee of the whole meeting under section 2.23B unless the mayor chooses to allow additional or all members of council to do so if he or she determines it to be appropriate. So I guess I'm wondering about the power that gives to the mayor.
That's to be deleted, I think.
Yes, I feel like it should be a council decision.
Oh, I see.
I think
Right.
it would be in those cases that that's not practical. And that's generally why you'd have one person making that call.
But that means the
'Cause you wouldn't
mayor, I
have-
mean,
But you wouldn't have, for example, if everybody was going to participate remotely, you wouldn't have a council to come together to make that decision.
John.
Yeah, just a sec. Jesse, you okay there?
well, I just feel like I'm not just talking about you, John, as the mayor now, but I'm talking about all mayors in the future. That gives the mayor a tremendous amount of power to call meetings and without council being there.
No.
No,
No, this is to have it electronically.
To have it electronically.
You can't have a council meeting with one person.
No quorum.
Yeah.
Man,
Okay,
Keith, sir?
Keith wants to add his 2 cents here.
my 2 cents would be along the lines of I don't really understand why we need to have this limit in place at all. Like, we can either meet in person or a hybrid or electronically. This is where things are going regardless if we're having a meeting and it's being conducted and mitigated by staff. Like, why do we need a limit of there being 2 members of council at one time anyway?
Why did we do that?
Well, why do we need to do that? I don't.
Changing that.
We're changing that. That's what we have in our current procedures bylaw.
Yeah.
And it was done because the council of the day did not want to see, 4 people being off somewhere and trying to conduct business with people elsewhere. And it was felt that it would be disruptive of trying to make this all work in those cases. So they specifically restricted it, that they didn't want 4 people all trying to participate that way on a normal business.
So appreciating that history, I just don't think it's relevant today anymore.
But that's what we're changing. That's
Yeah,
what
I
we're
would just say
getting
we
rid of.
strike the whole no more than 2 members of council at a time. Just be like, we can do it electronically, we can do it in person, we can do a hybrid. If we're doing it through City Hall, we can do it. Like, I just don't see it if it has value at all. I wouldn't.
Well, I think on normal business,
Yeah.
having the majority of your council not in council chambers, making decisions, you have the public here, et cetera, probably isn't what you want to do. So the message was,
That's more cosmetic. Like, that's for us to kind of sort out as we go how people feel comfortable. Like, to bake it in and say, there's a number and here's like a like, I don't see the value for the number of meetings I've been conducting online the last couple of weeks because we have to. It's like, I think that's how a lot of things are going to go forward. I just don't see the purpose of having a number baked in there at all.
so you just conduct.
I would move to strike the whole section.
Well, you can put that forward. That's the reason. They wanted
Oh.
business conducted in.
Yeah.
No, I
In
appreciate
City Hall.
that.
And so, I mean, the risk is that you then have a public meeting with a gallery full of people, or with
Yeah.
people in it that come to watch council have a discussion and debate.
Yeah.
And they're doing it remotely rather than in a public setting where people can engage with one another.
Yeah, those people probably wouldn't get elected again.
Pardon?
Do we need it in our bylaw, though?
Well, a lot of bylaw, I mean, I'm not suggesting for a moment you leave it in here, but you just need to know that when we draw up all of our bylaws, if we want to go through them line by line, we probably could throw away a lot of stuff or add to or from it. I don't see it being a problem. I mean,
I
I don't know I don't see the problem with it, to be honest with you. I think it's fair to try and keep some structure to City Hall.
I agree, and I also think that, you can look at the council that we have right now, and there wouldn't be a concern, but
Yeah.
it's a bylaw, and council is a continuing body, and so it needs to apply very generally.
Yeah.
It's
that
a bit of a check and balance.
And it may change down the road, but I don't think Parliament has to meet as sitting in the House, so does, your legislative assemblies, et cetera. So I think,
Well, I think you might have a stronger case there to say that there shouldn't be a quorum, but like maybe to limit unless that there's a quorum. But anyway, that was my 2 cents, is that honestly, I just don't see why, if some members in the future have a problem coming in electronically, I suppose those people would do it in person. I think taking it out provides the flexibility for council to conduct itself as it goes forward, and we're only going to become more and more digitized.
Can I just say one more thing? I also think we're making the change
Yeah.
because of the situation that
We're
we're
in
in
today.
right now, and so it's, again, we're making the change because we're in a bit of a
that's what.
different environment, and I think it's nice that the mayor would have a little bit of say, should we ever come into this situation again where, that there is some flexibility there, but I think generally meetings should be run as they have been run.
Okay.
And the other thing
I
too
don't think
is,
we have a seconder, so.
sorry, the other thing too is, Councillor Page and Jesse, is this is not something that we put in today. This is how it,
Yep. No, I've seen it before.
yeah, so it's not a new,
I brought it up last year.
yeah, exactly, so.
And you probably may want to consult with the public. Do they feel you should be doing your business in council chambers or they're fine.
Brittany's got her hand up, I see, so.
It's electronically.
You're next, Brittany.
Thank you. One of the questions that I would have is, say, we have two people away. We already know that they're going to be away and they're calling in, they're expected to call in, and then somebody's sick. Could that third person then, but has the capacity to call in, could that third person then be told by the mayor, and not necessarily you, but by future mayors, that unfortunately they just do not have the right to participate because they cannot show up?
I don't think the intent is for I think the intent, and hopefully it's clear, is, that you'd either have electronic participation, likely as a whole,
Like we have today.
or you'd follow your normal rules, not that a mayor would decide who should be able to participate and who shouldn't. in
This
that
is exactly
circumstances.
what it provides.
I think we just need to get this done for this purpose and have those larger conversations down the road. I think the intent is, not, and this can be changed after this when we have that more wholesome discussion. I think the intent is just to give that flexibility, not change our current way we do business, and just give that flexibility in events like this. It's certainly not the intent that the mayor gets to decide who participates and who doesn't on a regular basis.
Correct. And I do very much see the value in having us attend in person. I think that's very important. But you're always suggesting that we need to follow the policy, and what you're suggesting in the policy provides power that at some point, if people needed to attend electronically, that that could be denied by the mayor.
Yeah. So why don't we note that, and we'll look to change it if we're going to make more changes down the road.
No. So what I'm hearing from you is we'll make note of that and not address this in the future because we won't have to. We're addressing it now, and so we need to address it now while it's on the table in front of us.
If you want to do that, that's fine. I'm just saying the intent was to deal with this situation, not how you do business in the future.
Yeah, no, and I understand that.
Well, does someone want a second striking it then?
So just the whole. Yeah.
So that wouldn't be, hang on, that wouldn't be, you'd have to defeat the first one, because that wouldn't be a friendly amendment to speak of. So,
Well, you can do an amendment. I'm not sure exactly what
well,
the
an amendment is strike it.
So maybe just,
So it's
so the concern is having the mayor be able to determine whether we have electronic meetings or not? Is that the
So
concern?
It'd be the prerogative of a council member to come in electronically.
Who would determine?
Does it say a council member, or what does it say? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me.
It says no more than 2 members of council at one time may participate electronically at a council meeting or committee of the whole meeting under section 2.23B unless the mayor chooses to allow additional or all members of council to do so if he or she determines it to be appropriate.
Why don't we just say all members then? So
Yeah.
Well, the previous one, 224, says the member presiding at council meetings or committee of the whole may participate electronically. Done. That one is fine.
Clean,
You
yeah.
strike 2.5, and it just stands that it is in the purview of a member to participate in person or electronically.
no, the
depending
presiding member is
Oh,
the chair.
Right.
Yeah. So that's why that one had to be. Can we just strike where it says one or
Two.
if it just says all, then I think it's clear that if we just maybe change that.
If all members of council could participate,
Why doesn't it just say, unless the mayor chooses to allow all members instead of additional or all? Then you get away from that fear that a mayor could choose who he wanted to participate.
I think that's fair. I would say that, so it's Janice. I would say that that's fairer, because the whole thing here is that I thought within changing this, my concern was around that all 7 of us could be somewhere else doing the whole thing electronically, and perhaps Sarah would be the only one that's there at City Hall. That's why we changed, that's why I flagged 2.24, because it wasn't flagged in the original correspondence. And I said, it makes no sense that the chair of the meeting has to be physically in a bricks and mortar spot.
Yeah.
Maybe that person has to chair from home or from somewhere else. And that's why I asked 2.24. And my apologies, I didn't send it to everybody. I sent that just directly to Sarah because I felt that 2.24 needed to be changed, because the expectation can't be that the chair, whoever that might be, can always be in physical confines of City Hall.
Exactly.
So I think one of the things that come to my mind though is, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other what we change here, but is we're doing this today because we're in this situation, right? So we got to be careful we're not setting ourselves up for failure in the normal operation of the city in normal times. Like, we wouldn't even be having this conversation today if we weren't in the virus situation we're in, and the bylaw would read exactly like that.
Well,
Right?
I think to that point, if we had been participating more actively electronically going into this, the friction for which we need to jump over this hoop in the first place would be erased already. Like, this is, to a certain degree, a normal operation, because this kind of stuff is happening every 5 to 10 and more frequently in the years.
Right.
So we need to be able to operate in both conditions, and that is normal operations.
Yeah.
But
So-
I like,
You understand?
I think we just, yeah.
So does that work then? If we just
You,
strike the word?
can you read it?
Yeah, so I'm talking about 2.25. So then it would say, no more than 2 members of council at one time may participate electronically at a council meeting or committee of the whole meeting under section 2.23B, unless the mayor chooses to allow all members of council to do so if he or she determines it to be appropriate. So either we're gonna be able to have an electronic meeting, and whoever needs to participate electronically can, or you have your normal meeting where most people are supposed to be here. And remember, that's for a committee of the whole meeting and a regular meeting, not special.
So
And then I think I'll give you, that
Flexibility.
if you want to look down after we're through this, whether, that's old fashioned and that isn't necessary, I think you can do that. But for now, I think it takes away a fear that a mayor could, restrict
choose.
how many people could participate.
So this would permit basically 2 members to come in at any time at their discretion, and when you try and get over 2, then it's, the mayor can allow for all. And if the mayor's allowing for all, then anyone can mix and match.
Right.
Correct.
Okay.
May I?
Oh, Jesse, yeah.
May I? So I just, what I was concerned about is that too much power is in the mayor's hands. And really, because it should be council as a whole, including the mayor, that where the power lies. Is that happening now?
Yeah, this is, what we're trying to do is solve the problem we have right now, where we don't want you guys in here. And unless we either strike, you can always have electronic meetings and everyone can participate. Or somehow, someone has to be able to say, no, we need to participate electronically. Because you're in a kind of a catch-22. Council isn't together to make that decision. And, or we don't want to bring council together to make that decision. And, the person that's the leader of council is the mayor. And they would say, okay, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, and as the chair of the meeting, doesn't make sense for us all to come in. Let's do it electronically. I guess the worst case scenario would have a electronic meeting and choose to do something else. Right, as soon as council comes together, then you're a decision-making body. What's the fear? I'm not sure
I don't know what the fear is, Jesse.
The fear is that a mayor in the future could decide to go ahead with a council meeting at their behest, and and that people aren't allowed in
Just change
because
that.
they aren't physically there.
No, we just changed that to all you can do is allow all members to participate electronically.
Okay,
So normally it's two just for a cow in a regular meeting, the ones we have scheduled. And in a case like this, the mayor would make a call, no, let's do this electronically, and they couldn't choose how many people. Everybody gets that right to participate that way.
Yeah, if I heard Janice correctly, it sounds like there's a fear that you could end up in a situation where certain people are said, you're doing electronic or you're not, and maybe that's more or less onerous on those individuals and therefore affects their ability to be part of a discussion than it would be for others. Right? Someone's out on a trip and they're like, you have to participate in person, someone else is in town, or like you can participate electronically, I'm the chair, I say, it's like you take that. So
Yeah,
I think this is good. I think for me this addresses the concern
Yeah, so,
that I understood to hear.
yeah, you wouldn't be able to, a mayor wouldn't be able to do that.
okay. My only concern, as long as the legislative power of the council as a whole is maintained through this, that's all I care about going into the future, that the body of council is where decisions are made and that mayor is not driving that.
No, a mayor cannot make a decision on their own. That always has to be made by council. The only authority is you need someone to decide whether we're going to meet electronically or not, just for regular and committee of the whole meetings. Otherwise, for special meetings, that is allowed already.
Okay.
All right, so just read the wording out again, Kevin, so Sarah's got it.
I've got it here.
You've got it?
Yep.
Okay, do you want to read it back so everybody's clear
Sure,
as mud?
yep. No more than 2 members of council at any one time may participate electronically at a council meeting or committee of the whole meeting under section 2.23B unless the mayor chooses to allow all members of council to do so if he or she determines it to be appropriate.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Thanks very much. Is that it? We got one more. Update.
Okay,
Oh, you
so,
got my sheet, Kevin.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
so we're on
So Kevin's,
update.
yeah, Kevin's gonna give us a bit of an update, and there's been lots going on. So go ahead, Kevin, you got the floor, and I'll fill in some of the blanks as well with some of the conversations I've been having with Interior Health, the Minister of Health, and the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and the Attorney General.
All right, so I'm going to let Len speak to where we are locally as an EOC. I think obviously, we're getting various things from various folks. I do appreciate when people hear things out there that you let us know what's bubbling out there. Ginger is monitoring social media, so I think we're hearing.
Hang on a second, Kevin. Janice, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Did you want to stick around, or do you want to go? Because I see you're working there.
Oh, I'm good. I'm just listening.
Yeah, so like I said, Ginger is definitely monitoring social media, and obviously all of us are getting various things from various people. So if there's things bubbling, certainly let us know, and if there's mixed messages out there, let us know as well. We're certainly want to be able to give you as much information as possible. It's really important that we have a consistent message out there, and we're not having different conversations out there than what we agree to as an organization as a whole. So so let us know if there's some gaps there and you need some more information. I know everyone's comfort level as a community is a little bit different, and everybody has an opinion, and everybody feels that that risk tolerance, I guess, is a little bit different. What we hear is somewhat can be somewhat different. I know when Dr. Bonnie Henry speaks, I find that she has some narrative sometimes, which isn't necessarily you know, sometimes it feels like advice versus what is a directive or order, and you know, various people interpret that differently. Minister Robinson on the call today certainly emphasized a few things that local governments can be doing, and that's education, making sure we're connecting with those local leaders out there in your groups that can get that message out.
Kevin,
Yes.
so, Sarah, can you turn off your?
Oh, sorry.
It picks that up.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so she really emphasized that's one thing that certainly as elected officials, as staff, and connecting with, you know, those influential people in community that can really get that message out is an important thing to do. So that's, you know, and the other thing, and I don't know that, do you want me to speak to the call, or do you want to?
Yeah, I'll fill in the gaps. Go ahead. Yeah, you
Sure.
touch some base on
So
something along the lines of what you just talked about.
yeah, so Minister Robinson, who's our minister, as you're aware, and Minister Farnworth, who's public safety, we're on this call today with mayors and CAOs. They committed to doing this once a week, normally on Thursday, but they chose to have that meeting today. And really the central message there was we need a coordinated provincial approach to this. We need to rely on what the public health officer is telling us, and really work hard to make sure those things are happening in our community. And the government will be issuing a number of ministerial orders to ensure that we have that ability to do that. Like I said, they were, you know, the Minister Farnworth basically said it's crucial and critical that we all are rowing in the same direction. They are going to suspend our rights to call local states of emergency. They don't want to see individual local governments doing their own thing. They want us all doing the same thing and taking the same approach, and really working hard to,
At the same time.
yeah, make sure that we're sharing information, what's working in our communities, what's not, where are those problem areas. So I think, you know, that was definitely a very strong message that happens. The other thing Minister Robinson committed to is that through both the deputy minister of both ministries, that if there are gaps that elected officials are feeling out there, that we communicate that to them and ask for that. I guess some local governments have been doing that in the media, and they don't find that helpful. That they want us to address that with them, and they'll do their best to try to address that as much as possible.
So hang on, Kevin. I think, Jesse, you have a question there?
So, you know, this taking away of power of council to declare a state of emergency, I got to say that, you know, that's a slippery slope we're going down here, because we're already quite limited as to what we can do, and it feels like, you know, this could just go down the road where council becomes superfluous. Is that true?
No, I think the intent of the state of emergency was, as it's called, a local state of emergency. So if you had a flood in your community, you had a wildfire, you had whatever, that you need to act locally to deal with it. I don't think the intent was ever, if there's a provincial-wide, in this case worldwide, situation, that individual local governments would do their own thing. That I would say even under the current legislation, I think you would have to somehow justify what is different in your community than the rest of the province, why you needed to do things differently than what the in this case, the public health officer was directing you to do, or the, the ministers, et cetera.
So the other thing about a state of emergency that some people may not be aware of, if we were to have that control within the municipality here, we would be taking on a certain amount of responsibility with that as well. Whereas the provincial government, when they declare a state of emergency, they take on that responsibility. Do you understand where I'm going?
Yes.
As an example, we would then be in charge of that whole piece, and we'd be taking that responsibility away from them. So there's potentially insurance ramifications around that also.
Well, and I think,
So, as an example, the government, if they had a flood in a community or an area and they declared a state of an emergency, they would resume responsibility for funding that rebuild or whatever the case would be going forward. Whereas if we did that, we'd be left on our own to do it.
and
And by the way, just one more thing though, keep in mind that when the mayor of Vancouver comes forward with some of these ideas, they have their own charter. They're different than everybody else in the province.
but that won't,
So that can or cannot have impact.
well, they're overriding that as well.
Yeah.
I think
What if-
I think the other
what
thing
if-
is that, I think the other thing is
I'm finished.
you end up having potentially impacts elsewhere that you really may not even be aware of. For example, they're going to issue a ministerial order to take over the authority around all transportation in the province, because what they're seeing is getting supplies and stuff up to the north now is a problem, and they need to deal with that. So we could be doing something that benefits us, but has a
Impact
unintended,
on Caslow as an example.
consequence in some
So what-
other communities. So
What if we have a flood in this town? Can we not, are we now not allowed to have a state of emergency?
No, that's an isolated,
Can I,
I'm not sure with the,
so my understanding is, Jesse, and we'll clear this up going forward. This is a provincial problem. This is not a localized problem that we're dealing with. And it's a federal problem. So you have three different levels of government working on this together. What you have is you have the feds at the end and provincial government really calling the shots around the parameters. And then their expectations is that they have the experts on the ground, they have the people that know how to analyze this and deal with it, and they expect us to fall into line with it. And so far, I mean, we'll never know if they got it right or not, but if we, and I'll let Len speak to this, all of the emergency operations centers work hand in glove together in these situations. And as an example, if we had Castlegar doing different things to us, the whole system breaks down. And this is about structure and keeping some kind of structure together so you can hopefully get ahead of this. And now the Minister Farnworth was very clear about that this morning. In fact, he was clear to the point where I would say that he was basically saying, this is the way it's going to be. You step out of line and you're going to suffer the consequences. Because what has happened in the last 2 or 3 days, some municipalities were receiving information from various sources asking them to do different things than what the province was recommending. And some of them were on the verge of jumping ship to work with those particular pressure points that they were getting. And in fact, Trail did do that. Trail did do that on Saturday. They stepped outside the boundaries on Saturday. And I had a call from Interior Health, from the Chief Administrating Officer in Interior Health, and they were severely, I wouldn't say reprimanded, but they had quite a lecture from the provincial government about what they did on Saturday. And they were adamant that we stay in lockstep, and that's actually the words the minister used. Mm-hmm. And I think if we could let Len speak to that in a moment about how that works for them as frontline workers, whether it's be in the hospitals, ambulance, fire, or police. And Len, you might want to address the value of structure.
Brittany?
well, sorry that you're looking at a screen probably with LM written on it. So I guess, there's really good words said both by Kevin and the mayor there. I think these are the times that test leadership, and the best thing that, or at least proven in my time, although I would argue this is unprecedented, is certainly the fact that we have things in place, we have structures in place, we have processes in place, and they are designed to work during these times. And even though, again, unprecedented, and we're finding that some of the things are slow to react, sticking with, quite frankly, the provincial game plan is exactly where we should be for a number of reasons. Sir Mayor, did you want me to carry on with things, or did you want me to?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess, first of all, I always like to remind folks that we are under a provincial state of emergency, and that we're under a provincial health, and it declared a provincial health emergency. One sec, please. So with that, a number of the things that we're doing in the EOC, and I have to say, I think given the circumstances we're faced with, the emergency management program, certainly that it's in its infancy in Nelson, is working very well. If your test of whether or not it's working well is social media, you might have different thoughts on that. But first of all, one of the things we're doing is lots of public messaging. And like always, these things are slow to take root. We're finding a very strong increase in the number of people who are signing in and participating in our daily updates. We have over 5,000 people who are participating in that right now. And that's not our emergency notification sign up, but it is our people who are checking in on what we're having to say. Our media Facebook stuff, and Ginger's giving me the numbers, we're hitting over 10,000 people. So we are becoming exactly what we should be, the voice of authority in our community. So that aside from the social media, aside from the rumors, that this is a place where people know they can come to and see the authoritative position from the City of Nelson, which is in many cases, in most cases, reflecting what the provincial health officer is saying. And so we're continuing to communicate videos that the mayor's doing, huge benefit. The ability to communicate on all these fronts is huge. With that, we're obviously attempting to keep council as well informed as possible. Excuse me. And for some of you, it's not enough information, but I'm sure the information you're getting elsewhere and the media updates we're providing, again, the videos, the sit reps that we're sending to Emergency Management BC, the communications that Kevin is sending to most of you, and our ongoing sort of one-on-one pieces, where communication is a big thing, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of that. I am not a fan of being reactive to social media. I think we need to consistently push and direct folks to the authoritative sources. We are looking, I mean, obviously we're hearing over the weekend about the people who are in the parks not maintaining social distancing, and we're acting on that. You know, we heard in the parks that at one point somebody was setting up a little DJ stand and going and playing some music, which was causing a gathering, and park staff picked up on that right away, and police went over and said, hey, you can't do this. We need you to settle down and move on. And they did, and it was all peaceful and all worked out fine, which speaks very much to Kevin's point around the value of education and communication. And so we'll continue to do the education piece. We're looking at having, I call them ambassadors, but folks from the city walking around in more when the weather's nice like it was in the weekend, and reminding people of the importance of social distancing, because it needs to be stated time and time again that social media may point out examples of where it's not working, but man, I'll tell you, it is working in so many places. I mean, most people, by far the majority of people, are doing exactly what's been requested of them. It's just a handful of folks who aren't in agreement or don't understand or haven't been educated yet, and we're continuing to work to get there. And if that fails, we can work towards enforcement, but that's not our first avenue. We're working with a few groups around town that represent the vulnerable parts of our society, and we're working with Nelson Cares and understanding what the housing opportunities are if in fact they have to move to a quarantine site. We've helped establish a couple of hand washing sites in town. We're working with the Salvation Army to help promote their food bank because that's running completely very low. And certainly within the city of Nelson, we're continuing to work with staff to ensure that they have a safe and healthy workplace. We're following some of the newer work-safe guidelines now related to staffing, and we feel that that's been working well and will continue to do so as we continue to monitor how best to move forward with that. Our business continuity planning has helped. It helps us to understand those services that are, I'll use the word essential. There's big E essential and little E essential out there, but also the valuable services that we provide day to day that we need to continue on with. We're continuing with just a number of our important work that the city needs to carry on with in the first place. We're making sure that our police and fire responders can do what they need to do safely, including if this virus were to make its way more aggressively into Nelson. You've heard about the playgrounds and parks, and where we've closed the playgrounds and put signs up at the parks, and that is in alignment for the most part with most communities. Certainly, I heard again today from the the health officer, that they're not saying don't go outside. They're saying if you do go outside, please keep it to your family group and practice social distancing from the rest. Staying at home is the first choice, and we're advocating that. But if you do go outside for a walk, just practice that social distancing. There's lots going on. Obviously, communicating with ENBC, communicating with different agencies, helping our grocers in town understand how they can do their business safely. We have been talking with a health doc to help provide guidance for us as a city, and so we can also use that resource to perhaps provide guidance to businesses that are able to stay open and provide important services to us. We can go on and on. There's lots going on. We are working in the EOC as a respecting social distancing, and I am currently working from home. Will be most of the week, but I can guarantee you I've been on the phone or my computer nonstop and been dealing with a lot of issues. But all in all, I would have to go back to what the mayor and Kevin said about the importance of being part of the big solution and being part of that big emergency management response.
Thank you, Len. Kevin, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just in terms of what our ongoing or weekly meetings or that we participate in, the mayors and CAOs that just started, so they committed every Thursday they would do that. As Len mentioned, Emergency Management BC, that's a daily update. Health for the vulnerable populations, again, that will be weekly. And I know Chief Burkhart is participating with the chiefs. I'm not sure how frequent that is, but for example, they're trying to get clarification on how they enforce, because that's not necessarily clear at this stage as well. Again, it's quite a different animal than they're used to. Normally, public health would take that lead responsibility, and if there was some challenge with that, then they would call in police to support them. Normally, police wouldn't try to enforce a order by public health themselves. So there's those subtleties of of things that sound simple on the surface, but that's not necessarily how we work. So that group's trying to, sort those things out. And as we heard on the call today, I think there's going to be a number of ministerial orders that are going to probably give a bit more direction and authority to us as local governments of what we can do to support those strategies, I guess, of the provincial government and the public health officer.
Thanks, Kevin. It's
Your
Paul
Worship,
here.
if I may.
Len, go ahead.
Thank you. There's just one rumor. I don't like to take up council time to dispel rumors, but there's one I heard today that came through to me that some people were concerned that the highway was going to be closed, that blockades were going to be put up. I wish to say categorically that there is no intent to block the highways or have any sort of blockades in place. That is not something that we or the province or anybody else in a position of authority is looking at doing.
Okay, right. Good. Okay, Cal? Yep. Okay, so we can, I just want to add a couple of things that on a daily basis, I'm getting dozens and dozens of phone calls from people asking questions, and I just want to go back to the importance of staying on message and staying with structure, being headed by our fire chief downstairs. And I have to say that our centre downstairs, they've been doing an exceptional job. And it was clear day after day, you could see the credibility of that whole group down there was sort of building up over time. And they're working together as like a machine right now, I would have to say. And Ginger and fire chief have just been doing a trooper's job downstairs. As far as the people have been calling me and so forth and getting a hold of me about different things, but it's an example of if I were to go off message and abandon ship on what the province is putting out there around how we're supposed to manage this situation, we would end up with complete chaos. So it's really, really important that all of us stay on message as much as we can. If you want to find out what you should be saying, how you should be saying it, it's all on the website from the provincial government and the Interior Health. They're all on the very same page. And in fact, you can go to the federal government and get a similar messaging. So it's really important that we keep that same messaging going out, because we're at a point now, according to Interior Health, that we need to really keep the hammer down at this point, because people have a tendency to let up after a week or so and think, oh, maybe it's not as bad as it was, or it's not as bad as it could be. It is as bad as it was, and it could get a heck of a lot worse if we allow us to sort of loosen up at this point in time. The other thing I want to say is, before you go, Jesse, is that I talked to Kevin a little bit about this morning, and I wouldn't say that we planned for this, but it's kind of ironic that over the last number of months, with the help of council and all of our staff who have been fabulous in working with us over the last little while, I was expecting when this happened that we would see a mass exodus of people out of this building. We really thought that. Kevin and I, we talked, and we thought we would lose people. That they'd go home, they wouldn't come to work. Our public workers have been at work. All of our employees, for the most part, have been coming to work. We had a few that took a few days off, and Holly was one of them. I think she's back today, down on the front desk. And they've been excellent in supporting us. And they've been. It's almost like we sort of came together as a team here at City Hall, in the Public Works Yard, and Hydro, and all of our departments. And it's kind of ironic that we would end up with Colin moving in now to assist Kevin. That we have an assistant for our police chief that we just promoted. We have Mike is moved in along with Len in the downstairs in the emergency office. Hydro, it's kind of ironic. We got somebody hired in there to fill that, to help backfill along with Alex. The same thing happened with Joanna. It's just like everything sort of came together at a really good time for us. And I have all the trust in the world in the group that we have leading us and helping to support all of us as a council and myself as the mayor. The only thing that I feel a little bit bad about is and it's not through any fault of anybody here, but we're in a situation where a lot of the information we're getting, we're being asked to keep it confidential. And sometimes you maybe as a council, you feel a little bit out of the loop. But we're trying to put as much stuff out as we possibly can at this point in time. And there's very little that you don't know about. But there are times when, as an example, I would get a call from Interior Health and they'd ask me to keep certain things confidential. But they're not things that are gonna, they're good for us. They're good things, and they're gonna make us better and help us to get through this situation we're in. And I know how it feels. I've been on council where I felt I was on the outside looking in. I don't want you to feel that way. You probably do to a certain extent. But if any of you want to call me separately, you're more than welcome to do that. If you want a better comfort zone. Jesse.
Well, I guess, part of what I've been feeling lately is, we were voted in to represent the people of this town. And I kind of feel like that representation for the people, and I know it's an emergency situation, but the people are relying on local government to carry them through. And if their representatives are on the outside, not being let in, I don't really see what role we're supposed to be playing here. Are we just figureheads now, or do we just kind of sit and wait? It feels not very proactive, and I think maybe that's what you're feeling the pressure here, John, is from us, maybe some of us, is that we want to be part of the solution, but I don't really feel like there's much leeway into that.
Right, Keith?
It's just a comment for both of you two, and maybe all of you, but there's constant reference to the message upstream. We had this kind of play out with the essential business conversation over email this weekend. That basically comes down to, well, there is a message. That message has lack of clarity, and maybe what council is asking for, what I'm hearing, is there's no talking points. There's no day to day, what are we supposed to, should we get people to mobilize and help with masks? Should we really get on top of people and be like, hey, we shouldn't social distance? I have been circling on my bike a few times in between opening and closing, just seeing what people are doing and making some hollers at where appropriate. But I think what I'm hearing is to say what the message is without saying the message. Well, the message is whatever the talking points currently are. What are we pushing out that council can repeat, that council can broadcast, that council can be part of that solution so that we're getting the compliance we need to avert the greatest impacts of what this is going to be.
Thanks. Rick, I see you had your hand up a couple of times.
Okay, no, thanks, John. I just want to echo a little bit what Keith and Jesse are saying, and I've had some of these conversations with you all over the last few days, and that is under Section 6 of the BC Emergency Program Act, Section 6.3. We do have, in its wisdom, the province has defined roles for council and for and otherwise to participate in a semi more engaged way. So I just want to draw attention to that, and I've shared it with John and Kevin and some of the council. I'm happy to share it with the rest of you as we move, I guess, into in-camera next. I'm not sure how that's going to go, but it is there. It is about establishing committees. And the important thing that I want to draw people's attention to is that this isn't just a emergency, as we've said, as the chief said too. This is a social. This impacts every aspect of society, and interestingly, leaves most overwhelming majority of people healthy and perfectly functioning. It's just, so you've got this interesting disconnect, and what we need to recognize is that with all sorts of healthy, smart people at home, as we've seen with the tech community, either they're going to help, or they're just going to go off and start creating their own systems and structures because they feel a need, they see a need in their neighborhood or something, and they're going to start to innovate. So we just want to be clear that we've got to consider that the community itself really wants to be part of the solution as well, and whether we like it or not, they're going to start solving problems on their own. So the proposal I put forward, and I'm happy to share with the rest of the council, might help address that.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Kevin, did you want to? I think you wanted to answer, Keith.
Yeah, I think. We can certainly put together a short one pager of what that is. I think that messaging is, consistently with what you hear from the public health officer, that social distancing, washing your hands, all those things. I know that isn't glamorous or sexy or certain a lot of people, well, that's all it is. But that is what, they're asking us to do. And I think if we put some energy in how we do that the best way possible, and certainly Minister Robinson talked about that, if there's, how do we share that amongst our local governments, what we're doing to get that buy-in and that happening, I think is, a really good role of certainly we're working on that as staff, but certainly council, what you're hearing out there, how do we redirect people to go, okay, how do we get that level of compliance? How as a community, we do this better than anybody else out there? How do we get young people to buy in, et cetera? So certainly that's a really good role, and that's what I think we're being called to do as at the local level. Implement this stuff really, really well. And if we do that, they're saying we will come through this. We won't overwhelm our public health system, and we'll get through this thing. And certainly, it is different than a flood. It's different than a wildfire. Most of those events happen, and then you're into recovery, and you're into, how do we get resources to people in a short period of time. This is, this long, this potentially quite a long response period, and I don't think you necessarily can separate or not, wait till the end of the response to get into recovery and supporting the community in other ways. So I think some discussion around, how do we want to engage that part? And again, maybe, how do we engage the community on saying, okay, we want to be, in the best position possible that we recover as quickly as possible. Or maybe even now that we're all at home, how do we, build software from our homes instead of in our companies? So how do we look at those? And I think that's a bit what Councillor Lautenberg was talking about. How do we engage that part? I think the differentiation, and I know it's really, I think this is where it's challenging out there, is there are people that have a different perspective of what the province should be doing. And we don't have well, I guess we had some authority, but right now they're saying, no, local governments, we do not want you to implement your own strategy there outside of what we're asking you to do as a province. Certainly those things that we're asking you to do, put all your energy in how we do those really well, but we don't want you blockading the highways. We want you to make sure people are social distancing. So that's the piece I think council has to unite around, is that we are going to do what we've been asked to by the province as best as we can, and maybe the best in the province, as opposed to we're going to come up with a new strategy to deal with that. I think it was pretty clear from the province. They don't want us to come up with a new strategy. They just want us to do what they've identified as the best way forward as best as we can.
Brittany, and then Keith.
So thank you for that, everybody. I think that part of that messaging is to let people know that we do not have, that we have to follow the province, that we don't have power to, go, take stronger action. I think that having that as a clear message out there, then we're out of it, and instead we're focused on the things that we do have control over. And I think that would be a really good message to get out to the public, because I didn't realize that today, but I guess it was because you just heard in the meeting. So
Thanks,
I think
Brittany.
that.
Yeah, I think, in hindsight, it's too bad they didn't, have that strong message, a week ago. Because I do think, a bunch of people have worked on, what else can we do, or, can we implement our own strategy as opposed to what the province was doing? And I think if they would have, been clear on that in the beginning and said, we really need you to do this, and that is your authorities, and that is your role, then maybe you would be able to refocus some people on the things they could do.
Before you speak, Brittany, I just want to be clear. So, a couple of things. The Minister Dix Farnworth, who talked to us today, all of the Premier, they've been exceptionally good. Like, I've been around this racket for a long time. I know this is an unusual situation, but I mean, they're very open about what they're trying to do. So they've done an incredible job so far. And keep in mind, this is new to everybody. This is completely new to everybody. Nobody ever dreamed that this was happening. But one of the things I did learn yesterday was that they're learning a lot from some other countries now too.
Oh, yeah.
So that's, we're actually, in some respects, we're not in a bad place because we're behind some countries that have made the mistakes that we're not going to make going forward, hopefully. But hopefully. Keith, you want to finish?
Oh, can I just follow up on that though?
Yeah.
It's important, I think, to articulate that, because I know today at the federal level, Dr. Tam did say, communities that have identified that they need to self-isolate, or that they're taking more extreme measures than the provinces, that was acceptable. And so clearly there's some miscommunication between the federal government and the provincial government. And so I think that we do need to have that really clear in the messaging, because I know a lot of people today, after they heard her speak, will think, okay, then we do have the authority to do more, and we don't.
That's a good point. That's a good point. You're right. And I heard that myself. You're right. Keith? Yeah, we want to find out about that.
The things that are still in front of my mind is we put in some good planning, capacity, people to respond to the current emergency that we have in front of us on the medical side. And that's consuming everyone's day to day, and I fully appreciate the amount of stress and work that is. What I want to toss our minds to a little bit is back to that idea of having an economic response task force, sending some direction to some of our other bodies that while they're working at home, pull together the brightest minds in our community, keep it small, keep it tight, come up with the kinds of recommendations our local governments can be enacting on that might not be obvious to us as we're in the midst of this, so that in 3-4 weeks when we're starting to look for things to do, we've had someone work these problems out ahead of time. And think about it, people from industry, people who don't usually go and seek the light or the attention, but like those really smart people in our community, and we have tons of them. And I'd like to make sure that we are doing that now, so that they're doing that work in the background, so that we can get in front of all the recovery aspects of this that we can possibly get in front of. And we're not then having different arguments or discussions that, we're not always the best people to be having those discussions. We're not the experts in all these domains. So I would still like to push the NADP to put together a task force.
Yeah. I talked to Rick earlier about that, and
there's different people and different ideas of what
I think we're going to get on that here sooner rather than later. So we're committed to definitely doing something along those lines. And Rick, go ahead.
I was more of a question. On the agenda, we are set to go in camera.
Not necessarily? No.
That's just a regular piece of our agenda, just in case we have to go in camera.
Yeah. Okay.
Otherwise,
great. I just wanted to understand that.
If there's more questions, we'll take them. But I know it's not easy to do, but we just got to trust the process and trust the people that are trying to deliver this whole scenario from top to bottom, that they're doing the right thing. And from what I've seen to date, we're in really good shape with our structure here, and we're feeding off what the province is given to us. And I think they're doing the best they can with the situation that's at hand at the moment.
So just one last question, I guess.
Yeah.
When we say we're going to do that, is that something that by the time we meet next week, or we're meeting in the next 7 days, we'll have something to vote on and push through, or are we just leave on a task
recovery
force?
piece?
A recovery piece. Yeah.
We need to talk that through. Yes, we will. First of all, we have something. We have to decide what it is. Is it recovery, or what does it sound like? We got to be sure we know what we're doing here. So Rick and Kevin and I are gonna meet on that and put some meat on those bones, and we'll bring it back to the next, meeting.
Or we can, if others want to participate in that, why don't we get some initial thoughts, and we can pull together one of these and maybe get a Tom Thompson and Andrea. I think, Rick, you had suggestions of a few people that might fit the bill. Anybody else that thinks, here's, maybe we want whatever, maybe up to 7 folks or something to have those initial discussions. I certainly can touch base with Andrea where they're at. Obviously, there's, a group both through the BC Chambers and through Economic Development, Community Futures that are already having those conversations eventually.
I had talked to Andrea, and I think what's interesting about, to Rick's point, about this being a different situation, different reality, is there are people that oftentimes you can't pull into those discussions that now are available and willing to contribute. So it's not necessarily, and a lot of them are the names, my list would be names you recognize, but also people you wouldn't recognize. I'm sure Rick has people in the same boat, but that's one of the interesting parts. Like Andrew's on that list, but there's other people that I think we should send an invite out and say, let's pull it together.
Piece, Jesse, before we go, what do you got going there now?
Well, what I'm hearing is essentially council has very little to do now but relay the message of the province, which I understand, and keeping that hierarchy structure going. But I do think, we were voted in to represent our community. And this could be a very long process, months and months and months. And I think it's on us when it starts to end that we have done something. Sorry, Finley, can you give me a second? I'm right in the middle of a meeting. Thank you. I'll be right out. That we have something that we've actually worked on during this time, that when the community pivots back towards us, that we have something to offer in terms of rebuilding, in terms of some good ideas. I think that's really important. It's all we can really do at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
and I would just.
Sorry, I just want to.
Sorry.
I think the other thing you can feel good about is you put in a good emergency management team that is dealing with the day-to-day. And that's your job as council, to put those structures in place that can respond to something like that, you as council don't necessarily, have to get involved in that. And I know all of you are doers and problem solvers, and it is hard to step back from that and say, I'm a policy maker. My job was to put in the right structure so that we do a good job of responding to this. So you should feel good about that.
Look, there's the mayor.
Yeah, and I would say that Jesse, in the BC's Emergency Program Act, Section 6, 3.1B.
Rick, do you read all that stuff? Do you read all that stuff?
I do, actually. Yeah,
that's good. He's on the committee.
There is 3.1A, I should say. There is a structure in place for just this type of situation, and it's not, the idea isn't that council, especially in an emergency like this, is just sort of sidelined, because the structure itself is evolving. And so there is a role for council to participate along with the whole community. So within the structure that we've got, there is a role there. So it's not like the whole system says, okay, council, for the next 18 months, go off and you're on your own, have fun. No, there's actually a place for it. So I just want to stress that.
Yeah, thank you. So if you want to know, actually, if you want to know who's really in charge of this, you see the LM on the screen? That's the guy that's pulling all the levers right now. So. Yeah,
that's the day-to-day operation.
Yeah, that's the day-to-day operation, right?
Happen, of course.
At the end of the day, we're the oversight, for the corporation itself. But we turn that over to the people that have the experience to do it, and we trust the process and we trust the people we have working for us. So with that, if there's nothing else, we're doing it in a closed portion of the meeting. Rick, we're going to talk after, and we're going to start the ball rolling on this. And a motion to adjourn, please. Rick and Jesse, all in favor? Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye, Finley.
I have something before we go.
Yeah, go ahead, Cal. Oh, you are there.
I am here. Sorry, I had a brief power outage here and I lost you guys for a little bit. But happy 42nd anniversary, John.
All
Oh,
right.
thanks. Yeah. Oh, speaking of that power out, by the way, we can fix that.